Welcome to another deep dive. We're going to be exploring the life of Anna Blackwell.
Oh, Anna Blackwell.
She's a fascinating figure
Yeah.
who really kind of bridged the worlds of spiritualism and early Spiritism. And our sources today are excerpts from online encyclopedia entries,
Okay.
one in Portuguese and one in English.
Oh,
And get ready for some intriguing historical insights,
I'm ready.
especially if you're interested in how Spiritism took root in the English-speaking world.
Very cool.
Yeah, so one of the things that I find so fascinating about Anna Blackwell is that she's not a household name.
Right.
She wasn't a charismatic leader or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But her dedication to translating and promoting Spiritism had like a lasting impact.
Yeah, it makes you wonder about those ripple effects
Right.
of just individual passion.
Yeah,
You know.
totally.
Yeah.
So to set the stage a little bit,
Okay.
it's the mid-1800s,
In
a
mid-1800s.
time of social change, burgeoning spiritual movements.
Right.
Anna Blackwell was born in England,
I
but
know.
moved to the U.S. with her family
Mm.
and eventually settled in France.
Okay.
And her family, this is really interesting to me, her family was extraordinary.
Yeah.
Her sisters were physicians.
Wow.
One of them, Elizabeth Blackwell, became the first woman in the U.S. to receive a medical degree.
Amazing.
I know. Her brothers were active in the abolitionist movement.
Wow.
And her sister-in-law was the first ordained female minister in the U.S.
Talk about a family pushing boundaries.
Right. Can you imagine the dinner table conversations?
Oh, I would love to have been a fly on the wall for that.
I know.
Really remarkable.
Surrounded by these people that are just constantly challenging societal norms and pushing for progress.
Yeah, and it's interesting because she didn't necessarily follow directly in any of their footsteps.
Right.
But she certainly inherited that spirit of challenging conventions,
Totally. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So before we even get to the Spiritism part,
Okay.
we have to talk about the magnetic movement in Paris, which was before the rise of Spiritism.
Yeah, so think of it kind of like a precursor
Okay,
to Spiritism.
gotcha.
It was all about exploring the power of magnetism,
Okay.
not just as a scientific force, but also its potential to influence human health, even consciousness.
Interesting.
Yeah, they were experimenting with things like hypnosis and trance states,
Wow.
trying to understand these unseen forces that affect us.
Yeah.
It was a time of intense curiosity about the human mind and its connection to something bigger.
So people were already kind of primed for this idea of unseen forces at play,
Yeah.
even before Kardec comes along, and really kind of codifies all of this into what we now know as Spiritism.
Exactly.
But where does Anna fit into all of this?
So she was right in the thick of it.
Yeah.
She was a member of the Paris Magnetic Society and even wrote for the journal de Magnétisme.
Wow.
And in one article, she talks about living in an age of wonders where scientific discoveries and the aspirations of the human heart were about to converge. And it's almost prophetic,
Right.
considering that Spiritism, this blend of science and spirituality,
Yeah.
emerges pretty much soon after.
Wow. So she's already tuned into these ideas that are kind of swirling around.
Yeah.
Almost anticipating Spiritism.
Yeah, totally.
That's wild.
It is. And then enter Allan Kardec,
Right.
who codifies Spiritism.
Right.
And she becomes close friends with him
Wow.
and joins the Paris Society for Spiritist Studies.
Talk about being in the right place at the right time.
Right.
It's like she was drawn to it.
Yeah.
Like it was her destiny to play some kind of role.
Totally.
So she's friends with Kardec, involved in the Paris Society. This is all very French so far.
Yeah.
How does she end up bringing Spiritism to the English-speaking world?
Well, she moves to London
Okay.
and becomes this really crucial link
Okay.
between the Parisian Spiritist movement
Right.
and this whole new audience. And she does this by becoming the first authorized translator of Kardec's key texts into English. The Spirits Book, the Medium's Book, and Heaven and Hell.
Wow.
This is huge. Before her translations, most English speakers had no access to these groundbreaking ideas.
Okay, so hold on a second.
Yeah.
Translating a book isn't like just swapping out words.
No.
Especially when you're dealing with these complex kind of spiritual concepts.
Right.
How did she even manage to convey those accurately to a completely different audience?
It's incredibly challenging. You have
Right.
to understand not just the language, but also like the nuances of the culture, the
Wow.
historical context.
Yeah.
Imagine trying to explain, I don't know, the concept of fluidic mediums
Right.
or paraspirit to someone in the Victorian era with their completely different worldview.
Yeah. It's like trying to explain quantum physics to someone who still believes that the Earth is flat.
Exactly. And you know what? Her success is evident in the impact of her translations. Even Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of Sherlock Holmes, drew on her biography of Kardec for his own book, The History of Spiritualism.
Wow, that's a pretty big endorsement.
It is.
So she wasn't just a translator.
Right.
It's almost like she was like a cultural ambassador.
Yeah.
Right, bringing these revolutionary ideas to a whole new world.
Yeah, she had a very particular vision for her translations. She wanted to make sure they remained true to Kardec's teachings without any outside interpretation.
Right.
And in fact, her first translation of the Spirits book was financially supported by a British spiritist. And after some initial hesitation by Lady Caithness.
Wait, Lady Caithness, who was she?
Oh, she was a fascinating character in her own right.
Okay.
She identified as Catholic, Spiritist, and Theosophist.
All at the same time?
All at the same time.
Wow.
It just highlights that diverse spiritual landscape of the time.
Right.
And the complexities of individual beliefs.
Wow, talk about embracing different perspectives.
Right.
But why the hesitation? Did Anna have any reservations about accepting her support?
It seems so, yeah. She was very dedicated to preserving the purity of Kardec's message.
Right.
You know, probably worried about any potential influence or misinterpretations.
So she was entrusted with this huge responsibility to bring these ideas to the English-speaking world in a way that was faithful to the original.
Totally.
So in her translation of the Spirits book, she includes a biography of Kardec.
Yeah.
What was her impression of him?
So she describes him as grave, slow in speaking, modest in his manners, seriousness and mental sureness. Neither provoked nor avoided discussion.
That's not really what comes to mind when you think about somebody who's starting this whole new spiritual movement.
Right. You'd kind of expect someone a little more flamboyant.
Right, a little more.
Maybe a little more, I don't know, spiritually theatrical.
Right, exactly.
But it's even more intriguing that, you know, he wasn't seeking the spotlight.
Right.
But his ideas were taking the world by storm.
Yeah.
Thanks, in part, to Anna's work.
So what else did she do besides translating?
Well, she didn't just translate the words. She really embodied the spirit of Spiritism. She tirelessly promoted it in English-speaking communities, writing articles, participating in discussions, and fiercely defending the teachings whenever they were challenged.
Okay, so there's this whole other side to her story.
Yes.
It's like this saga of publishing Kardec's work.
Yes.
And it involves this guy, Pierre Gaëtan Lemery.
Oh, Lemery.
The head of the Spiritist Publishing House.
Right.
And it kind of raises these questions about the early movement itself.
He does.
And we're going to delve into that.
Yeah.
When we come back for part 2 of our deep dive.
Yeah, wait.
Welcome back to this deep dive into the life of Anna Blackwell.
Back into the world of Anna Blackwell.
All right, so we left off with this whole mysterious reluctance of Lemery.
Right, Lemery.
To translate Kardec's work into English. What was the deal with that?
Well, he cited the cost of translation as the main reason.
Okay, but remember, Anna was doing this work for free.
For free.
She was driven by her commitment to Spiritism.
Yeah, it makes his reluctance even more perplexing.
It does.
Right.
I mean, she even offered to cover printing costs.
Yeah, and advertising.
And advertising.
I know.
So what else could have been going on?
Well, it's a bit of a historical mystery. We can only speculate, but it makes you wonder if there was some resistance to spreading Spiritism beyond France.
Okay.
Perhaps there was a desire to kind of control the narrative, or maybe fear of misinterpretations in translation.
Like they were protecting something precious.
Yeah, and maybe
worried about how English speakers would receive these radical ideas.
Exactly. And remember, Spiritism was challenging the religious and scientific norms of the time.
Reincarnation, communicating with spirits.
Right. All these things were very controversial.
So Lemery might have been trying to manage that.
Maybe,
Especially given the limited communication channels back then.
Right, exactly.
So instead of it being a deliberate roadblock, maybe it was more about caution.
Possibly, yeah.
A desire to make sure the message wasn't distorted as it crossed cultures.
That's a good point.
But then you have to consider Anna's perspective.
Right.
I mean, she was a trusted friend of Kardec.
Yeah.
Fluent in both French and English. And deeply immersed in Spiritist thought. Her dedication and competence were undeniable.
Yeah, but she still faced pushback.
Right. It makes you wonder if there were some deeper cultural tensions at play.
It's possible.
Maybe even an element of distrust towards the English-speaking world.
Yeah.
Or its ability to really grasp these complex spiritual concepts.
You're raising a really important point.
Yeah.
These events are never isolated. They're always shaped by the cultural anxieties and biases of the time.
Right.
And we can't ignore those dynamics when trying to understand Lamoury's motives.
So it's not just about one publisher's decision.
No.
It's about these broader anxieties surrounding the spread of new ideas and the power dynamics between cultures.
Exactly.
And ultimately, despite Lamoury's initial reluctance, Anna persevered.
She did.
She was determined to bring Kardec's teachings to a wider audience.
Yeah.
And as we know, she succeeded.
She did.
So let's move beyond Lamoury for a second.
Okay.
Tell me a little bit more about how Anna actively advocated for Spiritism.
So her translation work itself was a form of advocacy.
Right.
It made these ideas accessible in the first place. But remember that debate she had with that Russian researcher?
Oh, right. Aksakov.
Aksakov, yeah.
The one about reincarnation?
Yeah, that was more than just an academic disagreement.
It felt like it, yeah.
She was really defending the core principles of Spiritism.
Okay.
And in a way, the integrity of Kardec's legacy. It shows her commitment to clarifying the teachings, especially in the face of skepticism and misinterpretations.
So she was a scholar and a defender.
Yeah.
Armed with her pen, fighting for what she believed in.
Absolutely.
But what other forms did her advocacy take?
Well, she wrote articles for various spiritualist publications, and not just responding to critiques, but also explaining the fundamental ideas of Spiritism in clear, engaging language.
So it was about education.
Yeah.
As much as it was about defense.
It was both.
Right.
Yeah.
Imagine trying to introduce concepts like fluidic mediums or the spirit world to a Victorian audience that was so steeped in traditional religious views.
It required a very careful blend of reason, evidence, and persuasive writing.
Absolutely.
And what's fascinating is that she was also a strong advocate for women's rights.
Oh, interesting.
Which was intertwined with both spiritualism and Spiritism.
Okay, how so?
Well, both movements emphasize the equality of all souls, regardless of gender, and the importance of individual spiritual development.
Right.
And this resonated with women who were seeking greater autonomy.
Right.
And challenging the limitations imposed by society at the time.
So it was a way for them to find their own voice.
Yeah.
And to claim a space for themselves.
Absolutely.
In a world that often silenced them.
Exactly. I'm coming from a family of strong, independent women.
Yeah.
Anna was naturally drawn to this aspect of Spiritism.
It's like all these threads of social reform, spiritual seeking, intellectual curiosity are all kind of woven together.
They are. It makes her story even more relevant to us today.
It does.
It reminds us that individuals can have a profound impact.
Right.
Not necessarily through grand gestures, but through their consistent actions, their dedication to causes they believe in.
And in her case, a lot of her most significant contributions happened kind of behind the scenes.
Yeah, they did.
Through her translation.
Her letters.
Her letters, her correspondence.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, let's talk about that a little bit more.
Okay.
What was so crucial about her role as a correspondent, especially back in the 1800s?
Right. Well, imagine a world without the internet.
Right.
Or even widespread telephone use.
Right. No texting.
No texting, no instant messaging.
Yeah.
Communication really heavily relied on letters, journals, and occasional personal visits.
It was slow and often unreliable.
Very much so.
So her role as a correspondent was vital.
Absolutely.
For keeping the Spiritist movement connected.
Yes.
Across borders and cultures.
It was about sharing information.
Right.
Coordinating efforts.
Yeah.
And fostering a sense of shared purpose.
And her letters were more than just like dry accounts of events.
Oh, yeah.
Right. They were filled with her personal observations, reflections on the teachings, hopes for the future of the movement.
Right. She was actively shaping the narrative, helping to define what Spiritism meant to people around the world.
So it wasn't just about translating words.
Yeah.
It was about translating a whole worldview.
Absolutely.
A way of understanding the universe and our place in it.
Exactly. And she did it with a clear voice, a sharp intellect, and a deep sensitivity to the nuances of both Spiritism and the culture she was engaging with.
It makes you wonder what treasures might be hidden in those letters.
Yeah, what insights they could offer into those early days of the movement.
And Anna's unique contributions.
Like a historical treasure hunt.
I know.
Yeah.
Sadly, not all of her correspondences survived.
Right. But even the fragments that we do have paint this really vibrant picture of her dedication and the impact she had.
So as we head into the final part of our deep dive, I think it's worth reflecting on what stood out for you in Anna's story.
Yeah, what resonated with you the most?
I think for me, it's her unwavering dedication.
Yeah.
Even when faced with opposition and financial hardship, she saw translating Kardec's work as like a calling. It was something bigger than herself.
Yeah.
It wasn't about recognition or reward.
Right.
It was about serving this cause she believed in.
That's beautifully put. Yeah. And it reminds us that true impact often stems from passion and selfless service.
Absolutely.
And her story really asks us, what are we passionate about?
Right.
What contributions can we make, however small, to create a more just, compassionate, and enlightened world?
Those are big questions.
They are.
And ones that we'll continue to explore.
Yeah.
As we wrap up our exploration of Anna Blackwell's life and legacy in part 3 of our deep dive.
Welcome back to the deep dive.
We're back. We've been exploring this remarkable life of Anna Blackwell.
Yeah, Anna Blackwell.
A woman who might not be a household name, but whose dedication really played a crucial role in bringing Spiritism to the English-speaking world.
It's fascinating how somebody who was operating so much behind the scenes could have such a lasting impact.
It's amazing, right?
It speaks volumes about the power of individual passion and perseverance.
So we've talked about her translations, her fierce advocacy, even her family background of challenging norms.
Right.
But as we wrap up, what are some key takeaways about Anna Blackwell's legacy? What can we learn from her story?
Well, I think one of the most striking things about her is that she wasn't seeking fame or recognition. She was driven by this deep conviction in the transformative power of Spiritism. And she just had this desire to make the teachings accessible to everyone.
It wasn't about personal gain.
No, it was about serving something greater than herself.
It makes you wonder about all the other Anna Blackwells out there.
Right.
The people who are quietly working away. Driven by passion and purpose, making a difference without ever seeking the spotlight.
And they might not have their names in the history books.
Right.
But their actions create these ripples that spread far and wide.
And it makes us think about what are we dedicating ourselves to?
What are our passions?
What impact?
What impact do we want to make?
And it's not about the grand gestures.
No.
You know?
It's about consistent action, fueled by genuine interest and a desire to contribute to something meaningful.
Yeah. It makes you think about how ideas travel, right? And take root in different cultures. I mean, Anna wasn't just translating words.
No.
She was bridging this gap between two very different worlds, the French Spiritist movement and this English-speaking audience.
Right. And at the time, a very different set of religious and philosophical ideas.
Exactly. So she had to figure out a way to make these concepts understandable.
Yeah, and relatable to people.
To people that were coming from this Victorian era thinking.
It really speaks to her skill as a writer.
Yeah.
Her sensitivity to those cultural nuances and her deep understanding of Spiritism itself.
It's like she was planting these seeds.
Yeah.
And those seeds eventually blossomed into the Spiritist communities we see today in all these English-speaking countries.
All over the world.
It's hard to imagine how the movement would have unfolded without her efforts.
It really is.
And it's a reminder that sometimes the most profound impacts happen quietly.
They do.
Over time.
Yeah.
Anna Blackwell may not have led rallies or given these rousing speeches. But her translations, her letters, her debates, they all played a crucial role.
Absolutely.
In shaping Spiritism.
It's an inspiring thought,
Yeah.
that we can make a difference through dedicated action. Even if they seem small or insignificant. At the time.
It's been fascinating exploring the life and legacy of Anna Blackwell.
It has.
This true pioneer of Spiritism.
The true pioneer.
And we hope you've enjoyed this deep dive.
I hope so, as much as we have.
And remember, listeners, you never know what hidden gems you might uncover When you dive deep into the stories of these seemingly ordinary individuals who, through their passion and dedication, have shaped the world we live in. And as always, keep exploring, keep questioning, keep diving deep.
And keep listening.